Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me on the Thursday edition of the Israel Brief. I'm Rolene Marks, and wherever you are around the world, you join our global community from Northern Ireland to Trinidad and Tobago, to the US, to South Africa, to Kenya, to Ghana, to everywhere in between as we take a look at the top stories making headlines in Israel. And rain or shine, sleet or snow, war and peace, we are committed to bringing you those top stories, especially now in an age where misinformation and media bias rule the airwaves. As always, the Israel Brief is brought to you in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land. Now, as you can notice, I am still wearing my hostage pin. I will continue to wear it until the last hostage has returned. Nevertheless, let's get into today's top stories before we do what you guys love, and that is announce the mentions and the morons of the week. So we start, it is day 741 since the 7th of October, and there are still the remains of 19 hostages that are held captive by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. As much as we are joyous and celebrating the return of our living hostages and the deceased hostages that have been returned to us so far, and more about that in the show, we have a moral and ethical imperative to leave no one behind, and until all 19 come home, we will continue to advocate for the hostages. So let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin with news that, according to the Hebrew calendar, today marks exactly 2 years since the attacks of the 7th of October. Now, the Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, so some of you might be wondering, well, how come you didn't commemorate on Simchat Torah, because it coincides with the Jewish holiday. The calendar varies from year to year, but today marks 2 years in the Hebrew calendar, and starting the National Day of Remembrance and Mourning, the IDF Chief of Staff held a solemn ceremony at Nachal Oz base starting at 6:29 this morning. Now, 6:29 was the exact moment that the Hamas attacks on southern Israel started on the 7th of October. And Nachal Oz was a base that was attacked by the terrorists very close to Nachal Oz kibbutz. In fact, I've been there, and if you can imagine that as you're coming into Nachal Oz, the road splits and you go one way towards the kibbutz and one way towards the military base. It was on Nachal Oz base where 53 soldiers were killed by Hamas, and where the Tatzbitaniot, the female observer soldiers, where they were murdered and several of them kidnapped and taken hostage. It was a very moving ceremony by Eyal Zamir, the IDF Chief of Staff. Now, the flags outside the Knesset at Israel's parliament were lowered to half-mast, and during the course of today, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, along with the Knesset Speaker Amir Ohana and President Herzog, attended a ceremony, a national ceremony on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. And people have asked me this week, with our hostages returning, can Israel start to heal? Can you start to move on? And it's got me thinking, guys, and I'm sure those of you who've gone through a trauma can relate. You can heal to a point. I don't think we will ever fully recover. I think that October the 7th and this war that has gone on for 2 years, I think will stay with us who've lived it for generations to come. And I think what you're going to see now is we will be able to walk alongside our grief and our loss, but still be able to heal some parts of us individually and as a society. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. Share in the comments if you've been through a trauma as a community. How do you move to that point of healing. Now, while we are talking about the return of deceased hostages, Israel received the coffins of 2 hostages last night, and it has been confirmed by the forensic pathologists that there are the bodies of Muhammad al-Altarash. He was a Bedouin trekker serving in the Gaza unit in the IDF, and he fell in combat on the 7th of October, and his body was taken hostage. He's survived by his wife and 13 children, as well as his brothers. And the other body that was returned to us was that of Inbar Heyman. She was the last female hostage that was held in captivity. She has been returned to us. She was brutally murdered at the Nova Festival, and her remains, her body, taken captive by Hamas. In addition to this, the hostages returned to us, Guy Iluz, Captain Daniel Peretz, as well as Tamir Nimrodi, have been laid to rest. Tomorrow we will lay to rest in Bar. We will lay to rest on Sunday, Uriel Baruch. And we will also lay to rest, I think it is tomorrow, Eitan Levi. We're still waiting to hear about Yossi Sharabi, whether or not he has already been laid to rest and those details not being made public. But thousands gathered at the funerals wherever they could to line the routes and to accompany our hostages on their final journey. I'm going to refer back to one of the funerals when it comes to our Mensches section, because there's something quite extraordinary that happened last night. Meanwhile, Hamas say that they are unable to recover the remains of other hostages. They say they need special machinery. However, recently released hostage Ram Braslavsky, in his absolutely harrowing testimony to his parents, said that he was actually kept in captivity and made to sleep alongside the bodies of the murdered. And he says, Hamas know exactly where they are. And he appealed, please bring them home so I can finally be free too. I cannot be free until they are returned home. The Shin Bet have given, through mediators to Hamas, the exact coordinates of where they believe hostages, the deceased hostages, are being kept. Meanwhile, the Hostage Families Forum called on the government to suspend the ceasefire until all remains are returned. The chief of CENTCOM, that is Central Command, has warned Hamas not to fire and immediately suspend all violence and shooting of Palestinians. Now, earlier this week, Hamas murdered 50 what they call collaborators, 7 of them publicly. This has made headlines around the world. They've called on Hamas to stand down and adhere to the Trump plan. Meanwhile, President Trump has said that if Hamas cannot honor the terms of the ceasefire, the IDF could continue fighting on his say-so. It has also made the media that Pakistan, Azerbaijan and Indonesia could send soldiers as part of an international peacekeeping force. And finally, the Rafah crossing, which was scheduled to open today, might open at a later stage. This is according to COGAT, that is the unit responsible for sending in humanitarian aid. They're saying that there are still ongoing preparations to ensure the opening of the crossing that will be open to both vehicles and to civilians. So those are our top stories, guys. Let's take a look at the audience question before we get to your Mensches and your morons. And it comes from Hillary Gordon, and it's a very, very apt one. And it's, will we get all 19 back? Well, I can tell you with absolute confidence, Hillary, we are not going to stop until we get them all back. President Trump reiterated that everything will be done to ensure they come back. And I can tell you, as an Israeli citizen, we will not allow our 19 brothers to be left to rot in the Gaza Strip. We will work to do whatever we can to bring them all home. And that is why I continue to wear my yellow pin, because until they are all home, our hostage crisis is not over. So let's take a look at the mensches and the morons of the week. And I just want to say something, because I had a very uncomfortable interaction yesterday with somebody. It is my belief that the world has lost its ability to apply critical thinking. You are either pro this or anti that. You are either pro this person or anti that person. And here at Lay of the Land and the Israel Brief, we prefer to take a more nuanced approach. And you don't have to like certain political figures. You don't have to agree with everything that they do. But when they achieve something, we would hope that people suspend whatever dislike, and in some case like real despising of these people, to look at what has been achieved. And Israel's a case in point. We have a very complicated relationship with our prime minister. We can criticize him, but we can also give praise where it's due. And it really bothers me, especially when we are dealing with very sensitive topics, that people look at political figures, whether they are Israeli or American or wherever they are, and that is their decision, and nothing can sway that. There's no ability to give criticism where criticism is due, or credit where credit is due. And at Lay of the Land in the Israel Brief, we do not endorse any particular party or political figure. We are completely non-partisan. And I ask people that when you interact, especially now in this time of great sensitivity for the people of Israel and our hostages, that you think of this, that you think of how does my opinion affect people who are enduring very difficult circumstances. That's all I'm asking. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you what opinions to have, and you can disagree with me as is your right, but I'm asking for sensitivity and a little respect, especially to our hostages and their families. Okay, so that said, these are your choices for morons of the week. The entire group that embarked on the flotilla, especially Mandla Mandela, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his government for their silence on the ceasefire deal. Isn't that extraordinary, guys? How many times did we hear from South Africa, ceasefire, and then when it happened, stum, not a word. And I'm going to add to that, I'm going to call out the South African media, because I noticed a very interesting phenomenon yesterday on X, and that was after the announcement that Captain Daniel Peretz, may his memory be eternally blessed, after it was confirmed that his was one of the deceased hostages returned to Israel. And Daniel was born in South Africa. He experienced his childhood in South Africa. His parents were South African, and he made Aliyah, I think it was about 13 years ago. I could be wrong. But I noticed that people were saying online that they are very angry and very upset that they did not know that a South African was taken hostage, or that a South African was murdered on the 7th of October and his remains taken hostage. The government did not say anything, and the media did not say anything. And they are very angry because of that. And I agree with them. And I hold you, the South African media, accountable. You are not there to be activists. You are there to report on the facts. And the fact is, Daniel Peretz, may he rest in peace, was born in South Africa. He had dual citizenship, and you, Cyril Ramaphosa, and your whole tranche of ANC bigwigs, you have a direct line to Hamas. You could have played your role in ensuring that he was returned to his loving family. So those are our morons, guys. And now let's look at the mensches of the week. And we have basically by unanimous decision, President Trump, a lot of kavod for Prime Minister Netanyahu, as well as Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. And I think we really, really need to speak about Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the power behind the negotiations. Oh, and one more moron I forgot to mention, this coming from an Israeli viewer who said Amir Ohana, the Speaker of the Knesset, for removing his hostage pin when President Trump addressed the plenary of the Knesset. I know many people have thought that it's okay to remove their pins. Personally, it's not a decision I support until the last one is home. So that's her choice for moron, for making a point of removing the pin in the plenary of the Knesset, and I can fully understand why our viewer said that. But back to the mensches. All of the hostages and their families, absolutely. They are extraordinary, and I think of these hostages who came out to learn that their wives and parents and families were lions and lionesses. Absolutely. And I want to add my choice of Mensch of the Week, and that is former hostage Matan Angrest. Matan was part of Team Peretz, the tank team that fought off Hamas on that day. He was taken captive alive, where his teammates were murdered. Itai Chen, his body is still captive by Hamas. But Matan, who was released not even 48 hours ago, who is thin and frail and can barely stand, wanted to go, and he went to Daniel Peretz's funeral last night in Jerusalem. He went, he said, to honor his commander, who he will honor for the rest of his life. And he gave a eulogy, and I don't think I've ever heard people clap for a eulogy. But Matan Angrest, who said he's weak, he can barely stand, stood there and eulogized his captain, his commander. This is the generation that we have in Israel, a generation of lions, and I could not be more proud. Matan also said that he would go into Gaza in a second to fight and bring the body of Itai Chen back. That is Herculean strength, absolute Herculean strength. And Matan, you are exceptional, you are the best of us. And I also want to pay tribute to the 916 soldiers who have fallen in defense of Israel. I count 916 because of the confirmation of Tamir Nimrodi, whose fate we didn't know until this week. And a poem or a verse that I shared on my Facebook page that I actually got from the president of World Wheatso. And it goes like this: 916 soldiers, men and women, heroes all. They now sit among the heavens beneath the canopy of God, embraced by angels. They hold hands, wipe away each other's tears, and look upon us with quiet pride. From above they whisper to each other, we did it. A very emotional way to end off the week. So guys, I'm going to leave it there, but I'll see you on Monday for regular programming. And just a reminder to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook page is at Lottle's site. Our YouTube channel is right here at the Israel Brief. Please click on that subscribe button. We are on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks, on Substack at Rolene Marks, on Instagram at Rolene_Marks. And guys, God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you again on Monday. Bye for now.